Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode of A Giant Issue. I am Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Make sure before you do anything else, make sure that you make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is the only place you can find A Giant Issue. There's no podcast. It's only the webcast right now. So I appreciate all of you who have checked it out over these first few episodes. Episode 6 is right here, right now in Saquon We Trust. What do I mean? Well, I start this by likening back to an article that Patricia Traina, who is the editor for Giants Country, put out, and why she believed that I believe it was that she believed Saquon Barkley should be somebody that the Giants kept. I think it's interesting because I think she was amongst the people who had thought for a while that Saquon probably would be better suited to be traded because of how much cap space it would open up, and then the value and what you could get for Saquon. I always have been against it, and she wasn't alone in her thought process. There were a lot of people who thought that Saquon Barkley would probably be better if they cut ties with them, or the Giants would be better if they cut ties with Saquon Barkley. After all, he's had these last couple of years, one lost completely because of injury, the other one lost because of injury and then not playing as well. But I always looked at it and said, man, if you get a healthy Saquon Barkley, you know what he did in those first couple of years when healthy. So why would you get rid of something? And then I started thinking about it more, right? And I think that if Saquon wasn't such a high draft pick, if he wasn't a top 5 draft pick, would people still feel the same way about the Giants moving on from Saquon? I'm not sure. And here's what I think has happened. And I've talked about this before, but I think that the law of unintended, or maybe it was intended, maybe this was calculated, but in how the public has devalued the running back position, makes you really and truly believe that some of the backs that are taken later in the draft doing well points to why you should not take running backs early in the draft. So if we look at the running back climate this draft, you saw a lot of running backs who were considered to be top tier running backs not go in the first round. Does that mean that those running backs are not worthy of a first round pick, or because the running back position to a certain extent has been devalued, does that make it possible for you to get first round talented running backs in the second and third and fourth round? See, if you decide, hey, we don't see the value in taking a center in the first round, so nobody takes a center in the first round, the center that you get in the second and the third round, if that's the first center off the board, most likely that guy should have been a first round talent, but because of what we've decided is first round valuable, we're not going to take it. And I think that's where we have run into the situation with Saquon Barkley. But let's just be fair to Saquon, right? Because if we're looking at who has been considered to be the upper echelon running backs in the NFL, we know that Derrick Henry has put himself on a level as far as being a running back and working just as a hand the ball off to him alien of a back. We can say the same thing about Taylor and what he's done in Indianapolis over the last couple of years. Hand it to him, get out the way. In fact, I just actually had a column that was released on The Athletic talking about fantasy rankings of running backs and why the first tier is the first tier. And within that first tier, I had some really good, notes about the different areas that you put a running back in. There's two areas for me. Well, excuse me, there's three areas for me. You have the running backs that you just hand the ball off to them as many times as you can because you know they're going to produce. To me, there is Derrick Henry, there's Taylor, and then there's some other guys who are second and third and fourth tier, but those are the top tier. Then you have the category of the running back that you just get them the ball, whether that is handing it off to them or passing it to them. They operate just as effectively as receivers as they do as running backs. That's your Christian McCaffreys, your Kamaras, your out in LA, your Austin Ecklers, excuse me. So those guys are the guys who operate in there. That's the top tier. And then there are other guys who go into that. Then there are guys who are primarily pass receivers, guys who you don't really want to hand the ball off to them a lot, but you love them out of the backfield. You want them catching balls, getting out into space. Those are your guys like your Nyheim Hines, and so on and so forth from there. Guys who really can be a plus value as a pass receiver out of the backfield, even if they're not a running back. I mean, even if they're not a primary ball carrier. So to me, Saquon Barkley falls right in that middle category. Now I want you to answer this like honestly. If all four guys are healthy, and everything about the team is equal, who are you taking over Saquon Barkley? I say you probably would take Christian McCaffrey. After that, I could argue that Saquon Barkley is a better pure runner than Alvin Kamara and Austin Eckler. I could say that he is just as good of a receiver out of the backfield as Austin Eckler, probably a little bit less than Kamara. I think his explosiveness, his ability to take it to the house is on par or better than all of those guys. On par or better if Barkley gets it, open field movements, all that. I think he is on par or better than all of those guys. So if I'm looking at the type of running back, that seems to be what everybody wants in today's NFL, I mean, we're talking about Saquon Barkley. He's not a one-trick pony. Need I remind you of these stats when he was healthy? And he's only 25 years old. Let's not forget about that. He's only 25 years old. As a rookie, as a 21-year-old rookie, 1,300 yards rushing, 5 yards a carry, 721 yards receiving, 91 receptions, 7.9 yards a reception. The next year, over 1,000 yards rushing, almost 50 less carries, over 1,000 yards rushing, 4.6 yards a carry, 52 receptions, 438 yards, but 8.4 yards per reception. Though that was an off year for him. That was in 13 games. The year before he played 16 games. Next year he played 13 games. Then came 2020 where he was injured. Missed almost the entire season. 2021 coming off of major injury and then getting injured again during the season that kept him out for, I believe, maybe 5 games. Right? 4 games for sure. 4 games for sure. Almost 600 yards rushing, 3.7 yards a carry. Now you might be saying, wow, that's lower. But I've only heard everybody and their mother talk about how awful the offensive line was last year. So who's running well behind that line? Right? Who's running well behind that line? But that's what he did. Receiving 41 receptions last year. Now 263 yards. That tells me a lot of receptions that don't give him an opportunity to be able to pick up yards after the catch. But if you look at the numbers, that was 41 receptions on 57 targets. That's a pretty damn good catch percentage, right? 71%. He's a 73% catch percentage rated for his entire career, which means when you throw him the ball, he catches it. He uses his hands. He works well with his hands. He runs great routes. He's great in the open field. You get him the ball, he makes something happen. So now, knowing those statistics and what he has, you've improved the offensive line. You brought in a better right guard. You brought in a rookie right tackle who comes from a program who's a top 10 pick. You add more draft picks and guys to cement the left guard and the center position. So you do all of those things. And then you run that together and you say, now we add a different offensive scheme that should be more dynamic. An offense that's going to be friendly to Saquon. They've already talked about using him as a receiver and as a running back. And you're telling me if this guy goes out there and has 1,000 yards rushing, let's say he doesn't have 1,000 yards rushing because Kamara, never 1,000 yards. Eckler, I believe, may have touched 1,000 just barely this year, but both of those are considered to be upper echelon backs, right? I'm not going to hold you. Let's say that he rushes for somewhere around 900 yards. And let's say he picks up another 700, 800, 900 yards receiving. You don't bring that guy back? You don't want that guy back on your team? You want to let that guy go. You want somebody else to get a hold of that guy at 26 years old without the major amount of carries on his leg, with an injury that people come back from and are able to continue their career, with as hard as he works, with as explosive as he is. What kind of sense does that make? Yet all I hear from people is, oh, let's have him have a decent year so we can get his trade value up and trade him. What? Oh, we don't want to pay him a big contract. What? The contracts that running backs are getting nowadays are not big contracts outside of Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. These other guys, the contract that Kamara signed, there's a lot of things that make that contract manageable. The contract that Eckler has, a lot of things that make that contract manageable. You saw the contract that Derrick Henry signed in Tennessee. It's a manageable contract. It's not like you're giving these running backs quarterback money. Hell, you're not even giving them elite level edge rusher money, elite level wide receiver money. So now with this guy having that type of potential, you're ready to punt on that at 26 years old? I thought we wanted to have nice things, Giants fans. I thought we wanted to have players that were dynamic, Giants fans. I thought we wanted to see Daniel Jones be able to put his best foot forward. That's not going to be to give the ball to random like 4th, 5th, and 6th round running backs that you just picked up off the heap, or like some guy that's a free agent that you just brought in. That's being with the elite level talent in Saquon Barkley. If I put him up against all of those running backs that I would consider to be in the top tier, right? All the running backs, I think there are 5. You've got Jonathan Taylor, you've got Derrick Henry. I would put Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, or Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, McCaffrey, Kamara, Eckler. Those are the top. I'm going to put in the top tier based off of the production value that they give you, either as runners or as runners and pass receivers. If I'm taking those 5 guys and I put Saquon Barkley and I say, out of these guys, who's the best athlete? You can't get past one before you say Saquon Barkley. Maybe Derrick Henry because he's a freak of nature. Maybe Christian McCaffrey. But if we put Christian McCaffrey and Derrick and Saquon Barkley next to each other and just went athlete for athlete, I think you got 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. Does he bounce too much? Maybe he did. Let's see. Is he as forceful? Does he finish runs the same way that Derrick Henry does? No. But nobody does. Jonathan Taylor doesn't. What you have here, ladies and gentlemen, is an athlete that's not perfect, but has everything that you want in today's NFL running back. Why would you want to get rid of him? I don't. I want you to tell me in the comments why you should, or why you think that the Giants shouldn't as well. I appreciate y'all listening to another episode of A Giant Issue. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Make sure you catch all my work on Giants Country. A lot of the training camp profiles that I've done about 10 of those. You'll start seeing my good, great, and uglies pop up here in the next few days. One of them will be on Saquon Barkley. Newsflash, so make sure you check that out. Make sure you check me out on the Athletic, checking out all of my fantasy football or fantasy sports or betting columns that come on there. Check me out anywhere else that you might find me, my Talk Spicy Spot podcast every morning or most mornings, Monday through Friday. Until next time, go Big Blue.